Hello everyone, welcome to the grammar lessons for VRC 1000. Today we are going to do the lesson number 6, which deals with the tenses. So we have dealt with verbs in the previous lesson. So if you have not watched this video, watch that video, please go back and watch it, because today certain things that we are going to talk about are going to deal with verbs, and there are classifications of it. So I'm sure that you should know about the basic vividness of verbs and their forms to better understand tenses. Now, tenses is one of the area that is also much asked in exams like SNAP, exams like NMAT, exams like MyCat. So I've not seen very keenly being asked in ZAT or IFT, but the speed-based exams like the NMAT, like the SNAP, often ask questions of tenses, not specifically, sometimes fill in the blanks kind, but sometimes it can be just recognize the error, and there can be one of the sentences in the series of 5 or 6 sentences which might have an error of tenses. So we'll do that towards the end of the video today, that what are the questions that are particularly asked by all these exams. But tenses is an important area, so I'm going to focus upon fourfold agenda of this video today is about making you understand what are tenses and understand tenses rather than learn them. The types of tenses, the active and the passive voice, and there is one small concept of mood, which subjunctive mood specifically, which is peculiarity of our competitive exams. So if a question is asked ever, it is basically the grammatical error of the subjunctive mood that is asked. So sort of the rules that you should remember about subjunctive mood. And having said that, without much ado, let's get started with today's video. These are the 4 things that we're going to do. So tenses, I'm sure that you know that how many tenses are there and what are tenses all about. So tenses in grammar is a verbal category relating to the time of a narrated event to the time of the speech of the event. Time is frequently perceived as a time continuum, as an arrow that moves forward from one point to the other, from past to the present, through the present to the future, with 3 main divisions as past, the present, what is happening now, and the future. The past, present, and future are defined in relations to the present time, which is now, and the past tenses refer to any time before the present time, and the future tense denotes the time that is after the pinpoint now. Right? So anything before the now is the past, and anything after the now is going to be the future. Tenses is therefore a grammatical expression of the time reference basically being given. Right? So whenever we want to talk about the existence of things and their actions with respect to a time perspective, the time reference is denoted by something we call or denote by tense. Thus, grammatical tenses may not necessarily be equal to the real time. So try and understand that there is a narrative viewpoint that comes in, and therefore they are not necessarily the time in the real time that is actually depicted. So grammatical times is therefore different from the real time, and we have 4 basic aspects of it. So I've just put them across, that the actions can be therefore placed in these 4 major areas. This is distant past, this is immediate past, so we're going to have separate tenses for it, so just keep this in reference. So this is the first position, the action can happen. The second position, the action can happen right now. The third position where the action can happen, and then the fourth position where the action can happen. So the major 4 categories of the tenses that we can say. Now, apart from the time frame, what all other thing also, which I call as aspects or modes of the action, they can also tell us the manner or the mode of the action that is happening. So we can get the 4 aspects of the action. We have the forms like simple, which is also known as indefinite, continuous, which is also known as progressive, completed actions, perfect denotes the completed action, and then perfect continuous, the 4th aspect, which is continuing to completion. So it's continuing it, and whenever the point of observation has interrupted that particular thing, and therefore it's towards completion, so continuing to completion. And that are the 4 basic aspects where the action can happen. So if we do the due math, I believe you will understand that there are 12 tenses, but then we should understand that there are 20 total tenses in particular. Why? Because the 12 tenses are of active voice, but there are 8 tenses of the passive voice as well. So all in all, there are 20 total tenses. And I'm sure all of them are very relevant to our competitive exams. But out of the active tenses, there are 4 that I've analyzed as being a very peculiar or being a very favorite of all these aptitude exams. Okay, so conjugation is something that we call as when we change a verb in all of its tenses. The process is what's called as conjugation. So we'll shortly going to see the conjugation of the verb. I've picked up the verb as write, and then we will do all the conjugation on all the verb forms in all the tenses, active separately and then passive separately, of the word write. I'm sure that schools have guided you towards this. This is what we have learned in schools, that what does the simple tense do? It denotes a indefinite course of action. It indefinite course of action, and it's used for habitual or routine actions in the present tense or any other tense which is in the past and happen in the future, but they do not put a definite reference point. That's why it's called as an indefinite tense. A continuous always shows a progressive form. That's something that is continuing. It's ing forms. It's going on. It's processing, and therefore it's always denoted in the continuous tense. The second is the perfect, also known as a definite tense. Now this denotes a definite timeline. This denotes an action which is completed, finished, or perfected itself. The reason why we call it perfect is because it perfected itself. It's finished itself with respect to a certain point of time. So it perfected itself. It's finished. It's completed, whichever way you want to remember it. But remember, perfects denote completed actions. And then perfect continuous is also called as definite progressive. The idea is that this point, this is when continuously going on, but then at a point of reference it has been interrupted, so it's continuing to completion. So it's the period of time that is yet to be reached. So different tenses, I think there are formulas. I'm not a great admirer of learning the formulas because you will never be able to recall them. So I'm with the pro method that you should try to learn entire grammar with respect to the examples, because examples is something that you can very easily recall. So let's put the conjugation of write in all the active forms first. So for example, we can put up a subject, I write a book. So the simple present simple form is I write. The continuation, the ongoing form is I am writing. See, the helping verbs are changing. These are the auxiliary or the helping verbs. So I'll call them HV. Okay, have written. The perfects are always denoted by have. And see, this is a present and therefore we are referring to it as have. So I, why we're using have rather than has. He has written a book, but I have, because for I and you, the different persons, we use plurals. So plural helping verb. So this is again a helping verb, but this is the main form. And this written is also called as the third form of the verb. Okay, the third form of the verb. So just keep that in mind. Okay, perfect continuous, have been writing. So ing forms. Have been, again the whole verb phrase, have been writing, but again the helping verb, the have been, and then writing. Let's look at the past. I wrote a book. So I wrote it. When I wrote it, there's no indefinite, there is an indefinite timeline that I need to associate. So I don't need to give you a time. When I say I wrote book, I played matches and so on and so forth. I was writing a book. Okay, there is a continuous form with a helping verb. And then I had written, again with a helping verb, but then the third form of the verb for perfects. And then perfect continuous, continuous will always denote the ing form, so continuous. And then perfect will always denote the the had, but this is past, so we will obviously put had. And then obviously in case of the progressive, we attach been. So had been writing, so I had been writing a book. Future, will write, will be writing, continuation. So again the helping verb, now be is added. Will have written, the third form of the verb, and will have been. So the whole entire word phrase is verb will have been written, will have been writing, and then will have Been is the helping verb, then writing, have been writing, obviously the perfect continuous. So we convert them into the passive. So these are my 12 active tenses, out of which I believe the most important ones are this guy, the simple present, the difference between simple present, present simple, sorry, perfect, present perfect and past perfect. And then the future perfect continuous is something that we should definitely keep in mind, because these are often used in different forms, and there are certain specific questions that can be set up, which I will deal in the next few slides. So just stay tuned for it. But believe me, out of the whole mess of all the 20 tenses, these four are very confusing, and therefore if you keep this four into their particular place, I believe it will definitely be really helpful for you to gain good accuracy at the questions of tenses. Now, passive voices, obviously passive is something that we convert the subject to the object and object to the subject. So the book is written by me. Okay. Continuous, we use a form of something called as being, and therefore this is an additional thing that you need to keep in mind, because being is always the indicative of a no being was ever here, right? Being is always an indicative of a passive instance, right? So is being written, and see, passives always will have the third form. So third form clashes with the active voice also, but please remember, all passives will always have the third form. All the 8 passive voices always have the third form of the verb. So third form will only be conflicting with the perfect tense, because no other tense has third form. I think observe this table very clearly. Right. So the only conflict that ever is going to happen in your mind is the active voice ka perfect tenses with certain passive voices. Though, if you can clearly look at it, there is no conflict in the overall verb phrase. The overall verb phrase never conflicts. Okay. So has been writing, see, has been written, and there is no perfect continuous. Why? Because perfect continuous will split the whole thing of existence. For example, if I just force this tense into the passive, the tense will have to be I have been being writing, because being will be added because of the continuous form. So I will have been being written, a book will have been being written, will be, there is no been and being simultaneously possible, right? So it will sound absurd. Secondly, it will obviously challenge the reality, because in reality things can exist only in one form at one time, right? So basically perfect continuous in passive voice do not exist, right? Now let's change. I wrote the book was written. I was writing the book was being written by me. I had written the book had been written. Okay, I will write the book will be written. There is no passive of again in this case, because the passive will again split the existence into two. The book will be being, right? Be being, which will sound absurd, the existence into two states or two aspects at the same time, which will not be grammatically valid and therefore wrong. So I will have written the book will have been written. So for perfects, you see the extension happening as been. Okay, so just that is a one key way of differentiating between the passives of perfects versus active perfects. Passive perfects will always have been, right? Been in the third form, but active perfects have the helping verbs and no been. Similarly, continuous actives will not have being, only have verb plus ing, but passives will have being plus the third form, and the future perfect will not exist. So if you're struggling with this, I'm sure that you'll have to, put many, you can draw this table, and you can practice with different verbs. For example, I can say I can take a new verb like sing, and try to take the regular, irregular, any kind of verb. So for example, I sing a song, I am singing a song, I have sung a song, I have been singing a song. Then passive, the song is sung by me. So obviously, okay, the song is being sung by me. When you have interrupted this ongoing process, the song has been sung by me. So I think that is how you can practice this up. You should do it because you should know tense clearly. They will never overlap each other. They are never confused with each other. So in real life also, we should keep in mind that in the usage of the tenses, we should keep in mind that they will not be overlapping with any other set. So every unique set has a different distinction. And especially, as I told you, the 5 set which needs to be taken care of. The 4, the first, the second, the third, and the fourth in the active voices, which needs to be taken a bit more care of. Now, let me elaborate upon these 4. Why is the simple present tense a more problematic one? Because it refers to many things. It refers to a habitual action. I get up every day. It expresses general truths like fortune favors the brave. In a vivid narrative, it's also a substitute for a simple past. For example, immediately the Sultan hurries to his capital. To indicate a future event that is a part of a fixed program or a timetable. The train leaves, the flight leaves at 5:20, even if it is in future. I'm not saying will leave, because it is a part of the fixed schedule or the timetable. To introduce quotations, Keats is long dead, but he still says, because it's fresh in the memory. An exclamatory sentence beginning with here and there to express what? So please remember the exclamatory kind of a sentence, okay? The exclamatory sentence is here comes the bus. So we'll not say here will come the bus and here came the bus and so on and so forth, right? So present. And the most interesting one, when 2 actions of the future are being talked about, one dependent on the other, the former action is actually represented by the simple present and the latter by the future simple. For example, we will or shall doesn't matter. In a formal conversation, we use shall, and then in a normal informal conversations, we more or less use will. And also will denotes a more certainty of happening, and shall denotes a bit of possibility to it. So child comes back home. So when the child comes back home, this is in present. And since is action के बाद this is going to be arranged, so is present के बाद ही होगा. So when this action happens, the effect will be in the future. So we will go. So you can't say we go when the child comes back. I mean, in verbal, it is accepted, it may be accepted that we go when the child comes back. So in a lot of movies, you might hear it, but in formal written English, it will not be very correct way to say that 2 actions who are dependent on each other. Okay, the condition is which depends on each other. They must always be from present, and when the cause will happen in the present and the effect of that will happen in the future. So just keep that in mind. So that's the present, simple present tense. The rest of the tenses are simple enough for the present. For example, continuous form, it just an action ongoing at the time. As I said, ongoing actions or continuous actions. A temporary action that may not be actually happening at the time of speaking, but was happening in the recent past and is still happening to the recent future. So I'm studying Sidney Sheldon nowadays to express changing or developing situations. India is progressing day by day. For an action that is planned or arranged to take place in the near future. For example, I'm going to the cinema tonight. Okay. So, but if it's next week, I'm going to cinema next week is incorrect, because the next week will be I will go to the cinema next week. This week is a prolonged future, not an immediate future. So just keep that in mind, I believe, for the future. For perfect, another problematic tense. The perfect simple. Now, I'll go back to the slides. Please remember the difference between the simple present and the this is the domain of simple perfect, or you can say present perfect, and this is the domain of past perfect. Means if any action, particularly the duration entirely depends upon what is the action. So if it happens in the distant past relative to the observed point of view, it will be always related by had. But if it's from the respective point of view of now, if it is an immediate past, it is more or less represented by has or have. Has for the singular and have for the plural. So just keep that in mind. Okay, and if you understood that particular point of reference, I think present perfects will not confuse you, right? Because, for example, in this case, we can say to immediate completed activities in the immediate past. So he has just gone out. So has, not had. But what is, look at this one. He wrote 3 books is actually incorrect. Why? Because you are being very specific and the reader suddenly questions, why are you being so specific to say 3 books? Then you should have a time frame. I mean, I need to say I wrote 3 books when I was in college. That makes sense, right? But when you say I wrote 3 books, is problem. So you should rather actually say, so when there is no time frame mentioned, you have to assume it by now. And so we have something to the effect, I have written 3 books by now. And this by now is implied, and therefore this sentence becomes incorrect while this sentence becomes correct, that I have written 3 books. It's automatically understood by now. So the point of reference is always the now. So interesting question, because there is something that, where can be questions can be framed. However, all other things are simple. The present perfect is never used with the adverbs of past time. In such cases, simple past should be used. For example, India has won the match last week. Incorrect. Last week is not the immediate past. So India won the match last week. To express past actions whose time is not given or is not definite, actions with their effect continuing in the present. For example, I have never known him to be angry. Have you ever read Gulliver Travels? Okay, to describe even the past events, we think of more as an effect in their present and then the action itself. For example, I have cut my finger. This is the reason, also because the effects of things like movies, like novels, are more or less experiential things. So that is the reason why you will never say, I saw DDLJ. I mean, I have seen. I had seen. Okay, I have seen, let's say, DDLJ when I was 14-year-old. Now, this sentence, see, when I was 14-year-old is a past. It may seem that this is wrong, but this is perfect. Why? Because now you're recalling an experiential thing. So I have cut my finger because it's more of the effect. Okay, it's more of an experience. Okay, so when you read a novel, it's more of an experience. So I have read Gulliver Travels. I have read The Great Expectations by Charles Dickens when I was 9, and so on and so forth. So I think keep this in mind, because experiential things like movies, novels, accidents, mistakes have experiences, and experiences are always in the immediate past, not in the distant past. Even though they actually happened in the distant past, they have the effects, what I call as, on the immediate past. So that's treated very recently. For long actions and situations which started in the near past and then will continue very recently. For example, I have read 3 chapters since this morning. So it is this morning and therefore immediate past. Okay, then perfect continuous is simple enough for an action which began sometime and then is still continuing. I have been reading this book since morning. Okay, and there have been building the bridge for several months. So some action, this is clean as a tense, it will not be confusing you. Simple past is also a very simple one when actions are completed in the past, and generally adverbs are mentioned. The steamer sailed yesterday, we went home some time back. Okay, so to express imaginary situations in the imaginary future events, I had no longer holidays, I would be very happy. If I got rich, I would travel. So everything in the past, right? Okay, so just maintain, this is what is called as tense consistency. Okay, when this tense is used without an adverb of time, the time may either be implied as to indicate the context. He didn't sleep well, so it's obviously last night. For past habits, used to is used, so I used to carry an umbrella, so a clean tense. Then comes the past continuous, also a very clean tense, no problems with this. It was getting louder, so an action that was happening, and it was action which was continuing in the past. So a light went out when I was reading. So she was always chewing a gum. So for persistent habits in the past, right? So clean tense. Now the problematic tense, again, the third problematic tense happens to be in the past perfect. What is so special about the past perfect? Because there they when two actions are happened, in this case it is necessary to show which action happened earlier, and therefore the past perfect is used for the action that happened earlier. For example, when I reached the station, the train had started. Why? Because the imagine it this in a timeline. Okay, this is my reference point of now. Okay, and this is, let's say, an observer. So spare me the my arts, and we're deciding upon two actions. Okay, there is a reaching and there is a train leaving, right? So now according to this, if I would have used the train had reached the station, this would have been at this timeline, which is logically wrong. Why? Because actually the train left pehle, earlier to your reaching. So actually these two actions should be swiped, because here you are trying to tell you that the train had started when I reached the station. So here the train started happened first in a timeline, and then you reached. So this now marks the tense consistency. Why? Because obviously when you reach, the train had already started. So this action was actually completed. And therefore I will put a had here to show that this action was actually completed with respect to this action of reaching. And now my relative observer will be comfortable. So I had done my exercise. So this action done exercise happened when Hari came to see me. So Hari came to see me, and then when I had done my exercise. I hope this point is clear, because this is very interesting and very important. You have to understand that which action happened when, because see, in a very simple sentence it's easy to observe, but in a complicated sentence it might become a difficult problem. So I hope you will pause this video and watch it again if you have not understood this part at least. Okay, an action that began before a certain point of time and that was continuing at a given point of time in the sentence, a time expression since last year, few year, and then used at that time. So this is easy, that at that time he had been writing a novel for 2 months. Okay, so had. Then future is very simple. I think the only problematic tense with future is the future future perfect continuous. So let's look at future. Future, that tense, simple future tenses denote an action that is going to happen. So I shall see him, tomorrow will be Sunday. Future continuous tense, the actions that are ongoing at some time in the future. I shall be reading the paper then. We will be meeting next week. Future perfect, I shall have written an exercise by that time. So an action that will show completion in the near future. So it's simple to understand. The most problematic one is this guy. Why? Because the future perfect continuous tense indicates an action that represented in being in the progressive form over a period and that will end in future. Generally, a time period is mentioned along with it. Otherwise, it's supposed to be an incomplete sentence. Okay, for example, by next July, we shall have been living here, full stop. It will sound absurd, because what is then completed? Why you used will have been living? So what will be completed? The completion will be the 4 years. So the 4 years will be completed, and therefore in the next July, by next July, so we shall still be living, but this is the duration of the 4 years that will be completed. We will still be living, so our action will still go on, but what will be completed then? The year, the duration will be completed. So this is again the sense, because this is complex and it cannot be used to all the stative thing. For example, I can't say by next July we shall have been hearing, seeing, I mean, seeing someone is different case, but seeing all the stative verbs which I gave you in the previous class, in the previous lesson, shall not be used here. So because they will create a problem. So just keep that in mind. Gerunds, keep in mind, because they will be often confused with gerunds and so on and so forth. So just keep this in mind, because this is going to be a problematic one. Now, I think let's quickly wrap up the video. Only 5-minute more concept of something called as mood. What is mood? Mood is also called the mode in grammar. It's a category that basically reflects the speaker's view of the ontological character of an event. What is ontological? What is the existential character? This character may be, for example, real or unreal, certain or possible, wished or demanded. So mood is often marked by a special verb form or inflections, but it is sometimes expressed by a single word or phrase. Mood, which reflects the speaker's sense of hope or certainty in an event's existence, such as imperative, eat, or subjunctive, may he eat. So you're wishing. Mood is a form of a verb that takes to show how it is to be regarded as a fact, as a command, a wish, or uncertainty. So there are 3 moods in English, primarily the indicative, which indicates a fact or ask a question. For example, the sky is blue is a fact, you are indicating a fact. And then, why is the sky blue? You are even interrogating, so question. So all reflects an indicative mood. We have an imperative where we command. So we imperative mood gives an order or a command. For example, make your bed, go away. So commanding, the imperative, but the examinations are more interested in asking you the subjunctive. What is subjunctive? Subjunctive mood shows a wish, a suggestion, a demand, a condition, contrary to the fact. And this is where it is very, very interesting. So it's something which always talks about things that are not real. And how do we mark them? We mark them by plurals. I wish it were true. We will not say I wish it was true. That's the reason why we will never say if he was you, because he can never be you. So this is a wrong usage. You are making a wish. You are making talking unreal. So you will always replace it by if he were you. And that's the subjunctive. So I demand he be released. Okay, so subjunctive, just keep in mind, because subjunctive is something that is definitely asked. So I've just elaborated a bit on subjunctive. It's a verb which is to make a wish, a suggestion, a demand, a condition contrary to the fact. Remember, it explores the hypothetical situation, including there's another explanation for some real life examples, right? So, for example, expressing a wish. Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better, right? Making a suggestion. I suggest a chip be put, a chip, okay, in the future robot's brain. Okay, making a demand. The demand that I make to my reader is that he devote his whole life to reading my work. So the demand that I make, okay, expressing a condition contrary to the fact. I hear a man preach. I like to see him act as if he were fighting these. Okay, not he was fighting. Verbs can change into subjunctive mood. Most commonly, was becomes were, is becomes be, basically plural. Okay, not a very vivid sentence is going to be given to you in exam, but a very simple one which will have a plural marker. So I demand he apologize, because he should apologizes is non-subjunctive. So this is real and this is a wish. So this is a hypothetical condition. So I demand he apologizes. I demand he apologizes is a wish. This is not going to happen. So very interesting case. Just keep in mind, please remember that they will always be using more or less plurals. And when a singular noun agrees with a plural, it's going to be indicative of a subjunctive mood. Okay, so let's do an exercise. I am sure that you would have finished up. So these were just basic revision. You will have to change these sentences into the forms. So I've done that. So you can just check your answers. You can pause the video here and you can check your answers. So you have to change it in the present continuous. So the boy is speaking, the present continuous. Okay, Mr. Cooper has been. So it was present perfect. It was supposed to be present perfect continuous. Then the boat sails. It was a simple present. So the boat sails. And obviously, we have to change. Okay, yesterday was the past. To obviously, the present will be today. The present moment. So simple present. This was about future continuous tense. So will be going. Okay, has been crying. This was supposed to be present perfect continuous. Robert has eaten all the cookies. So present perfect. I had finished, past perfect. Had been teaching, definitely past, definitely perfect, and then definitely continuous. Okay, they will be seeing, future continuous. We shall have finished, and future perfect. So doesn't matter if you've got majority of them wrong, it's okay. Just brush up the concept of tenses, follow some basic exercises from Brendan Martin or any grammar book at your school level that you have, and I'm sure that you'll redo this exercise, you'll get them all correct. But please practice tenses because it's important. Let's move to the competitive exams questions. Okay, now this was a very interesting question. The answer correctly would be the second one. It may not look great deal today, but back then, past, it was a coup no man before had dared. Because this is completed to report. So remember, tense consistency, right? Tenses should remain the same in a consistent form. So there was, and according to this, no man before had dared to import tea into Ireland. Okay, let's look at the second question. Identify the grammatically correct sentence and the meaningful sentence. So we have to identify the correct one. The convict escaped from the prison and is believed to flee the country. Prima facie, it looks clean. This is an IFT 2014 question. But escaped, and it is believed, again, to have fled. Right? Who it has believed to have fled the country. So this is grammatically wrong. Did he travel by bus, by train? So this is actually a parallelism question, and by plane. Okay, parallelism I'm going to teach you in lesson 8. So this is lesson 6 today that we are doing. Visualizing success is not the same as achieving it. Perfectly balanced. Correct answer. I would do anything for my friend, but not for my neighbor. Again, a parallelism question. A parallelism error. So one tens, 1-2 parallelism questions. So that's what I was saying, that initially if you're paying attention, that tens not definitely, but you know, if any other exams is going to ask you, they will ask you in a very different form. So Then next one, new words, what we have to use the most appropriate, the correct one. New words could be used if required. So he says new words could be used. So this is actually a conditional sentence. Okay, so we have to form the condition perfectly. So new words could be used if required to express the full force. So he's using to express, right? See, to express, because so many verbs are there. Okay, indefinite, to express. So this is the indefinite. So this is not going to be affected by any tense, any number, any person. So I have to just arrange could and required, right? So I don't think first will make sense because new words could be used. There's no use of modal here. So can be used is a more better phrase if required, right? So can should have been this case. If necessary, new words should be used to express the full force of exclamation. That still makes sense, that if necessary, comma, new words should be used. Okay, an advice or a suggestion to express the full force of exclamation if necessary. New words will be used. Oh, wrong. It's not future, wrong tense. This is definitely gone. New words are used if required to express the full. I think if required, new words are used when required to express the full force. So word inconsistency. I think therefore second becomes the correct answer. Now, a snap 2015 question. You have to identify the error, the part of the sentence that has error. So I think the parents P should have been a singular. That's definitely A. And then I was born, not I am born. This is present, which is wrong. So both A and C. Quite an easy question. Look at the next one. Dash to the cinema tomorrow. So shall you be going? Now problem is with this, why unnecessarily attaching a ing form or making it a continuous form, right? Something we have to decide in the future simple. In the future tense, tomorrow is a future, and so will you go? Let's make it clean. Would you go? Past. Right? Will you go? Will you be going? Is unnecessarily. This is redundancy. So continuation is a redundant case. There is no need of it. You're unnecessarily putting it. Okay. Then I was playing tennis with my uncle when the delivery boy arrived. So this action happened in the past, indefinite. Okay. Has been playing. So there is no perfection of the playing. The playing was not complete. The playing was actually ongoing. So therefore, there is no need to add has been. I will be is like can't happen. The tense is not consistent. This is future then. Okay. Had been playing is again the past. So I had been playing tennis when the delivery boy arrived. So I think so it is this again that the playing was completed, but we have no hint of it. So I think we should go with the first one, that I was playing. So I was playing tennis, which is clearly expressing what it should. Seventh, he doesn't like to be disturbed when he would be working. I think unnecessary past and future past. Snap 2017 question. When he is working, he doesn't like, so this is present. Okay, so I think most chances are the second will become the correct answer. Let's look at the third. He would have been, This is too complex, unnecessary. And when he had been is like past. Definitely choose the correct answer. By the time the firemen arrived, past. So these are all the questions on tense inconsistency, or you can say tense consistency. The tenses should be relative to each other, they should be meaningfully arranged, and they should link them to each other. So the firemen, by the time the firemen arrived, the fire has destroyed many flats, would have destroyed. So the would have destroyed will mean it is happening in the future. So by the time the firemen would arrive, then I could have accepted this phrase. So no, the fire will be destroying, again unnecessarily complicating it. By the time the firemen arrived, the fire has destroyed, because this is immediate past of the arrival. Right, so will be destroying is wrong. The fire had destroyed many flats. So again, has destroyed versus had destroyed, immediate past versus the distant past. So his arrival के हिसाब से, with the point of reference to the arrival, it will be just there na. So we'll go with the first one and not with the fourth one. Though fourth is not incorrect, but I mean, going with the grammatical sense, yeah. So this is verbally right. Because verbally we don't complicate so much when we talk. We try to simplify our talking. Now try to identify the sentence which has grammatical error. These are all 2022 and 2022 TestNet questions. Which part has error? This is the subjunctive mood. So if I were in your shoes, I would not put a happy face. So no error. Okay, which part has error? Advised Rakesh, no. R should be capital, so perfect. Advice, is the spelling also correct? He said he was. So this is a reported speech, also called as indirect speech. So there's no need of punctuation marks. Okay, he said that he was suffering. Now problem is, he said that he had been suffering since 3 days, because this is definite time. So how can I use a continuous form without a timeline? So what is wrong? He was. So B as the error. Right. So I hope you would understand the value of tenses, because it's really very, very important. Before we end, let's quick recap. If you were paying attention, what we did today was understand the major classification and the sub-classification of the tenses. Tenses denote grammatical time of events. There are 4 basic aspects or modes of action: simple, continuous, perfect, and perfect continuous, which denotes indefinite actions, ongoing actions, completed actions, and continuing but interrupted towards completion or to completion. So active tenses are 12, passive tenses are 8. Perfect continuous tenses do not have passive, so just remember them. Moods reflect the speaker's sense of hope or certainty to any event's existence. So moods are of 3 types: indicative, imperative, and subjunctive. And then subjunctive mood is what is asked in competitive exams the most, is about the hypothetical conditions and denoted by verbs. So that's all for today's lesson. Next class will focus upon, again, the most frequently asked chapters of the competitive exams: subject verb agreement. Why subject verb agreement is important? Because there are a lot of conjunctive words which, verbally speaking, may sound absolutely clear, but while marking or while writing it formally may be considered wrong. Then there are nouns which seem singular, are plural, which are plural, seem singular. They should not be confused. There are certain prepositional phrases like a lot of, a lots of, a pair of, a pairs of, and so on and so forth, that we should keep in mind. And all in all, I have condensed subject verb agreement to 21 rules. if you just remember the 21 rules, which I have again bifurcated into 4 clusters, the cluster 1, which deals with conjunctive words, cluster 2, which deals with altered nouns, cluster 3, which deals with prepositions, and cluster 4, which deals with all other things, I'm sure that you will be able to remember them. Try to remember them with examples, and I'm sure that you will ace, which will help you ensure accuracy in the exam. So that's all from my side. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.